I never thought something as small as a zipper could change the way I looked at my life. That evening, standing in front of the mirror with the late summer sun glowing through the curtains, I realized how fragile the line between innocence and temptation could be. My name is Laura, and I'm 41 years old. I've been married to my husband, Richard, for nearly a decade now, and in those years, I've built a comfortable life filled with routines, compromises, and the steady beat of family responsibility. Richard had a son from his first marriage, a boy named Ethan, who had been only 11 years old when I first came into his life. Back then, he was all skinny legs, oversized t-shirts, and a quiet demeanor that often made me wonder if he even liked me. Over the years, though, I became part of his world in ways I didn't expect. I helped him with school projects, taught him how to cook pasta when Richard was away on business trips, and sat through countless soccer matches, screaming his name louder than anyone else in the stands. Now Ethan was 21, a college student who had grown taller than his father and carried himself with the kind of confidence only young men seem to possess. His once boyish face had sharpened, his shoulders broad, and he had developed that easygoing charm that made people want to be near him. He wasn't my son by blood, but in so many ways, I had watched him grow, cared for him, and guided him through life. And yet, on that particular evening, something happened that tested the emotional boundaries I thought I had built so carefully. Richard was out of town on business, something that had become more frequent over the past 2 years. His company relied heavily on his leadership, and while the financial rewards were undeniable, his constant absence often left me alone in a house that suddenly felt too big. That evening, I had been invited to a dinner event by a friend who insisted I needed a night out. After spending too many weekends curled up with books or Netflix, I agreed. I had chosen a navy blue dress that Richard once said brought out the brightness of my eyes. It was a fitted dress with a long zipper running up the back, elegant yet modest. As I stood in front of the mirror, the zipper caught halfway, stuck between my shoulder blades. I twisted and tugged, but no matter how I angled my arms, I couldn't quite reach it. Frustration crept in, followed by a self-conscious laugh at the situation. That's when I heard Ethan's footsteps in the hallway. "Laura? You need help with something?" he asked, his voice casual, unaware of the storm that would soon brew in my chest. I hesitated. Asking him felt too personal, too intimate, yet at the same time, it was the simplest solution. He was, after all, just my stepson. I told myself it was harmless. "Actually, yes," I said, forcing a smile. "Can you help me with the zipper? I can't quite reach it." He stepped into the room, his eyes widening slightly when he saw me in the dress. For the briefest second, there was a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze, but he quickly masked it with a polite smile. "Sure," he said. He moved closer, and I could feel the warmth of his presence behind me. His fingers brushed lightly against my back as he grasped the zipper, pulling it upward with ease. The small contact sent an unexpected shiver through me, and I hated myself for noticing it. When the zipper reached the top, I caught his eyes in the mirror. He smiled, almost teasingly. "There you go. Problem solved." I laughed it off, thanked him, and hurried to grab my purse. But inside, I was unsettled. Something about that moment, the nearness, the accidental intimacy, stirred emotions I didn't want to acknowledge. That night at dinner, surrounded by chatter and laughter, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed the scene in my mind, the feeling of his fingers so close to my skin, the way he looked at me with a seriousness that felt different from the boy I had once known. It wasn't that anything inappropriate had happened. Nothing had. But the temptation lay in the subtlety, in the awareness that a line had been crossed, not in action, but in thought. Over the weeks that followed, I noticed changes in how I interacted with Ethan. He was spending the summer break at home, filling the house with his music, his books, and his easy laughter. I found myself lingering during conversations, laughing at his jokes more freely, enjoying his company in a way that felt lighter than my time with Richard. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than appreciation for the young man he had become. But deep down, I knew it was more complicated. The zipper moment had unlocked something in me. It wasn't just about attraction. It was about loneliness, about the emptiness that Richard's absences had carved into me. Ethan represented youth, energy, and attention, the very things I was craving without realizing it. Still, I battled with myself constantly. I reminded myself that he was my stepson, that my role was to guide and support him, not to blur boundaries. I reminded myself that Richard trusted me, that our marriage had weathered its share of storms, and that giving in to temptation, even emotionally, would destroy everything we had built. And yet, every time Ethan laughed at one of my sarcastic remarks or leaned casually against the kitchen counter while telling me about his day, I felt the pull. It all came to a head one quiet evening when the house was filled with the smell of the lasagna I had made for dinner. Richard was once again out of town. Ethan and I sat at the table, sharing stories, the conversation flowing easily. After dinner, I excused myself to change out of my dress into something more comfortable. The zipper, once again, resisted. And without thinking, I called out, "Ethan, can you help me again?" The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. He entered the room, the same calm expression on his face, though I couldn't ignore the way his eyes seemed to search mine. He unzipped the dress slowly this time, his fingers brushing lightly against my back, and the silence between us grew heavy, charged. I quickly stepped forward, clutching the fabric to my chest, muttering a hurried thanks before disappearing into the bathroom. My heart raced, my reflection in the mirror revealing cheeks flushed with guilt, and something else I didn't want to name. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. I knew I had to confront the truth. I was dangerously close to crossing a line I could never uncross.